My name is Shirley. Thank you, Seema. Thank you so much for coming out here on a Tuesday night to listen to me talk about my silly side projects. So a little bit about me first before I begin. I want to tell you kind of why data visualization and why side projects. So first about data visualization, my first love was art. So when I was 4, somebody gave me a paint set, and ever since then, I was hooked. And all through high school, I took classes. I studied color theory and layout and all of that. My second love was numbers. And the reason for that is around middle school, around 5th or 6th grade, our family bonding exercise was sitting around the table after dinner, and my parents would teach me algebra, and they would give me math problems to solve. And I actually had a lot of fun with that. So thinking about numbers actually brings back really good memories. And so in high school, I was like, all right, math and science, I love this. So I took all the math and sciences classes that I could. Which you can imagine by senior year meant that I was like completely burnt out, and I went to college and I was like, you know what, like I'm done with math and science. I'm gonna do the most like completely opposite thing I can. And at 18 years old, I was like, all right, that's gonna be business. So I went to college and I was like, all right, I'm gonna major in business, and it was like a very weird, misplaced, like phase of rebellion. And so then I went and did like marketing and accounting, and I was like, I'm gonna be a banker. So then, and banker because numbers, because I love numbers. So in my junior year of college, I took my first ever computer science class, official computer science class. And that was like love in my first lecture. It just made sense just as much as numbers made sense to me, as math made sense to me. It clicked, I loved it. And that summer, I did an investment banking internship, and I was like, oh, hell's no way am I gonna do this for full time. So I came back and I was like, you guys, I need to find some sort of like software job out of college. And somehow, miraculously, a year later, I got my first full-time job working on front-end development at a place called Splunk, and they do big data. And I was fortunate enough that my first ever project was with D3. And so that was kind of a really, really great coincidence, because it brought all of my 3 loves together, and I've been in love with D3 and data visualization since. And the reason why I've amassed so many side projects since is because when I first started at this full-time job, I felt like an imposter, because I had about 3 semesters of CS classwork, and I had absolutely no internship experience. And here I was working with other people that were extremely experienced, and I knew I didn't know what I was doing, so I knew I had to supplement my full-time job with something. So then I started really aggressively doing side projects. So you're like, cool, side projects. All right, but why are you here? The origin of this talk is that last November, right before D3 OnConf, I saw Seema again, and he was like, hey, Shirley, you remember a year ago, I was like, do you want to do a talk? And I was like, yeah, Seema, I'm really sorry. I'm really burnt out with talks right now. They're so serious, and I need to prepare them, and it's really stressful. And I always get stressed out because that's my personality, because I want to make sure that people that come to the talk have a great time. And Seema was like, yeah, that's all right. I understand, but let me know if you're ever interested in giving a talk. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, he's never going to agree to this, but can I just talk about all the silly things I've done on the side, and so that I don't really have to prepare anything, and it would just be fun, and then I'll just give a list and people can just ask me questions after. Not really thinking that Seema would agree to this, because it sounds like such a ridiculous idea. And then he's like, sure, why not? And I was like, really? Okay, cool. So 2 months later, here I am. So thank you so much for having me and letting me do this, Sima, because I don't know who else would have jumped on that. But yeah, and thank you so much for, I guess, being interested enough to come here and listen. And so I have 10 side projects prepared for you in various stages of completion, and some have been released and a lot of them have not. I have like lessons that I've learned from them that are like more lessons for myself, and I'm not sure how much it's going to apply to everybody here, but I hope I can make your time worthwhile. So the first ever side project that I've ever completed is this thing called LAMMY. And it was a surprise birthday planning website for my boyfriend. It was in October 2012, so I had just started my full-time work, and it was with D3 and Node. And I learned Node and Express and Mongoose with this side project, which really meant that I like read some of the documentation and copy-pasted code and somehow like whacked it together so that it would work. And it was really horrible. Like I was looking back at this, trying to make it like trying to bring it back up again, and like and I almost didn't want to show it because it's like the design is embarrassing, like the code is embarrassing, even the context is embarrassing, and there's like no input validation whatsoever, and there was I had absolutely no understanding of database design, but I remember when I finished it, I really loved it because I was just so proud of the fact that I was able to put something together from front to finish, from beginning to finish. The second project that I did is a very simple check-in app for meetups. So this one is actually Ian's side project, Ian Johnson, and the story behind this is that he tricked me into it, and I do not let him down for that. Basically, he emailed a bunch of people and was like, hey, I have this side project. I really want to like have this easy interface for checking people into meetups because, you know, like it'd be great since we're like a data visualization meetup to be able to like, you know, gather the data and visualize it. And I was like, cool. And I thought I was going there. He was like, if you come, I'll like buy you pizza. And I was like, cool. And I thought I was gonna go there and like user test this like already made, you know, application. And I get there and he's like, all right, so here's the idea. And I'm like, wait, you don't have anything? He's like, no, will you help me build it? And I was like, I guess so. So I helped him design like the front end part of it. And even though he tricked me into it, it was really great because he's probably the first friend that I made in the D3 community, and I'm really, really glad that I did because I don't know if anybody's met him, but he's, you know, one of the most like open and welcoming people, and he really makes this like kind of community what it is. So this one, if you can see, the concept behind it was also the first time I really thought about a problem of like, oh, what do I want this to do? So the concept behind it was, oh, what if when somebody is checking, like if I'm checking somebody in, I can have the information of whether they're a part of the D3 meetup group and whether they have an RSVP or a wait list, or if they don't have anything. Like what if I can like see that right away, and then checking them in like completes the circle. So it was the first time I like kind of sketched out designs and like ran them by somebody else and like went through that creative process. It was the first time I learned SVG arc and SVG clip path, which so the first time I used clip path, I like made a like clip path for like define a clip path for every single user, and then like applied that to like every single circle, and that was not performant. And then it wasn't until like 2 months later that I learned that you could just define one and then use that for everything. So that was like first lesson learned early on. So it was also a very interesting side project because it meant really working with and considering constraints. Whereas before this, I was very used to developing on my laptop and on my desktop and having the performance that those provide. And so this was the first time where I had to think about like the performance on an iPad, and then like if you try to filter, like it's really slow on an iPad, or I coded it such that it was so slow on an iPad. And also, what is it like if there's a slow internet connection or a lack of internet connection? So the third one is one of my favorites. So I'll go into a little bit more detail for this one. So this side project was called 80K, and it was an exploration of the BART strikes in the summer and October of 2013. And for this one, I had a very specific question, which was, if, like these media articles are saying that they're making $80,000 a year, why are these BART employees striking? So, this is what it ended up looking like, and so here's all of the BART employees, all of the top unionized positions, and you can see here on this bar graph that their base salary isn't actually 80K, but rather somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000, so an average of 60,000. And the 80K figure that the news articles were getting was after they factor into their benefits, their health benefits, their pension, all of that. So that was the first lesson I learned digging into the data. And then the second thing I wondered about was, well, okay, so they make a base salary of about 60K. What's that like living in the Bay Area? So here's all of the different, here's some family breakdowns that you can have. So you can see that for a nuclear family living in San Francisco, the cost of living is about 80K. And that means that they're actually, if only one person is working in the household at BART, they're not making the cost of living at all. And only when they have a second income earner are they making it into the green. And the thing that I was the most curious about was that a lot of these news articles were saying, oh, union workers are being so unreasonable. They're asking for like a 20% raise. And that sounds absolutely ridiculous. But once I dug into it, I learned that it was actually not 20%, but rather 20% spread, or not 20% per year, but 20% spread out across 3 years. And it was actually between a raise of 5 to 7% over 3 years, which sounded a lot more reasonable, as opposed to the 10% that BART proclaimed, which was actually like between 2% and 3% every single year. And the thing that was the most interesting was that even though in percentage numbers, those like 10% and 20% and all of those numbers sound so different, but if you look at it in absolute numbers, in the 4th year, the difference between their proposals is only $6,000. So this is one of my favorite side projects because it really kind of showed me how, I always knew, but how easily data is manipulated in a news article, and then how much truth you could get from data if you just don't if you just take a very unbiased approach and just look at it for what it is. So when I first started on this, I wanted to make something that was kind of like a storytelling format, that was kind of like an infographic. And then I realized the more I did it, that felt like I was shoving information and opinions down like, you know, somebody's throats just as much as like one of those news articles was shoving information down my throat. Sorry, that sounds really weird. But then I wanted instead to let the data speak for itself, and so to let a visitor to the side project explore and form their own opinions. So from a technical standpoint, it also taught me something really, really important, which was at October 2013 when I put this up. I did not expect 30% of all of my visitors to be on mobile. That I expected a percentage of people to visit my visualization from their phone, but I did not expect it to be a third of my visitors. And that actually was really important because I had made a design decision early on that because there was so much information and I wanted to put it into one screen for like ease of reading, I had put and hid a lot of the information into hover interactions. So I don't know if you were able to see, but a lot of the things I did, like a lot of the numbers, it will only show up when I hovered over them, which means that the 30% of the people that was accessing this via mobile wasn't getting that information very easily. And also the fact that like I had both hover and clicked interactions meant that like it was really hard for them to have a good experience when they came onto this. So this is the project that really made me wonder about visualizations in mobile. And finally, another reason why this was really important for me was that it was the first time in both my full-time job and my side projects that I ever worked with a specific fixed data set. And I was able to ask it questions and get answers, and that was so satisfying to me. And it wasn't something that I started kind of really questioning the work that I was doing on my first job. And it's actually one of the reasons why I moved to my second job. So a very simple side project that took me about a week to do, but had a lot of impact on my life. So this side project, I also really, really love. It might be like my absolute favorite or my second favorite. It's actually in November of 2013. Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, and we saw so much coverage about the destruction and the tragedy that happened. And I really, really wanted to do something about it. But the thing that was the most difficult was that a lot of these news sources would say, hey, donate to the Red Cross or donate to XYZ. But there was also a lot of news articles about scandals and about how these donations weren't going directly to the refugees in need. And so my original idea was that I really wanted to map out donation information and see if I could figure out a way to make it more transparent of where is my money going if I donated to something. I learned a very important lesson, which is these things are hard. Transparency is hard, especially when I don't know anybody that work on this sort of things. So even though that was my original idea, I ended up mapping Instagram pictures onto the Philippines instead. And that was a suggestion by one of my friends, Miles. And I'm so glad that I did that because I learned something absolutely unexpected, which is that even with all of the, even with how somber and tragic and it all was, because there was destruction everywhere in those Instagram pictures, and but it was also really beautiful how much hope a lot of those pictures were showing of like how much after all of the, like after the typhoon had gone through, pictures of like children just laughing and just being really glad that they're alive and thankful that they're alive. And that's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorites. And I think it's one of the reasons why I've never put it out there, because I have not been able to figure out how to do it justice. And it's been 2 years, so I don't. From a technical perspective, it was also really fun because it was the first time I ever used a public API to gather my data. So it was the first time I ever used Instagram. It was the first time I had to figure out like what this OAuth thing was. It was the first time that I had a question and I went and had to get the data and clean the data and get it into the shape that I needed for my project. And the most important lesson I learned from this is that geo is really, really hard, like really hard. The stupidest thing to do is to try to draw all of the things with SVG, because then the browser crashes and performance is bad, and to use tiles or like to use leaflet or something else for performance sake. So you might notice that I have absolutely no images for this, and the reason is because I got the data. So this is the project itself, and it maps the path of the typhoon over the Philippines. And because I had grabbed the data 2 years ago, and since then Instagram and Facebook has changed their image hosting from like Amazon to something internal. So all of my links are broken. So you don't actually get to see all of the beautiful pictures, and I'm really sorry about that. But the basic concept was that as you drag this circle over this path that the typhoon took, it acts as a filter of all of the Instagram pictures. So you could see geographically, like, so you could see all of the Instagram pictures that were taken in that radius, and kind of explore like what the people thought or what was going on. And then you can also kind of, zoom out or zoom in. And on top of that, I have this mini map here, which, if you could see, there's like all of these. It's divided into, I believe, it's not provinces, but like sections. And it's colored by how much funding they've gotten, like how much of the relief money that they've gotten. And you can see, even though the typhoon went through so many of the places, a lot of them are very, very light. And then only this one little spot up here is like 100% opacity, which means that that's Tacloban, where most of the media coverage was. And that's where most of the money went because of the media coverage. Whereas everywhere else around here that was also affected, but did not see as much of the relief money. So the next thing that happened was this side project of mine, which I keep bringing to meetups, and like I started on it in like spring of 2014, and it's still not released. And my friends joke that like this is just never gonna get released. It's called WONGFU. It's a visualization of all of the collaboration between WONGFU is, I'm a huge fangirl of this YouTube channel called WONGFU. And around 2011, between like 2010 and 2013, I started noticing that they were doing a lot of collaboration with the other YouTube channels. And I got really curious about like the shape of their collaborations. And so that was one of the inspirations for this side project. Another inspiration was that around that time, the 2014 D3 on Conf was like around March of that year, and I had gone, and one of the sessions was about how do you visualize complex things in mobile, complex visualizations where it might stretch, you know, the hardware of the phone. It might stretch the, like, there's the screen resolution problem. There's the problem of not that many there's the problem of interaction because you obviously can't hover, and so many things might be too tiny for the user to like click on. So what's a way to visualize for mobile? And one of the interesting things that got brought up in that session was, well, the most natural thing to do in mobile is to scroll. So a lot of the information that you see on mobile is unveiled with scrolling. So then I wondered, okay, what will my visualization look like if I let the interaction be only scrolling? So I think now it's called like scrollytelling or scrollytelling, or it's because it's like storytelling and scrollytelling. And now it's like, yeah, so it's called scrollytelling, but I like to say that I had this idea first. And I just never got to claim it because I don't release things. So what would it look like if you just limited to scrolling and basic click interaction? So I'm sorry I keep like moving back and forth. So I have to date 5 versions. I've gone through 5 different versions. So I want to show you my first version, which was this really simple. So, you know, as you're scrolling, these YouTube channels, they join YouTube, and then as you can see these links, as they start releasing videos, these links might form where they've done collaborations. So, you know, in 2009, it's pretty slow. And as like 2009, like as we go through 2009, we see like more and more people collaborating together. And so if I keep scrolling, like in 2011, like you can see more people just kind of starting to get like attached to each other. And by like 2012, like other than these two, they're all interconnected. And then that was really cool. But I was like, well, that's great because at any point I can see the summary of their collaborations. But what I'm really, really interested in is the shape of their collaboration at any given time. So then somewhere I thought of this where it's each of these lines is a different YouTube channel, and each of these circles is a video that they released. And every time that a YouTube channel hops over to another YouTube channel to collaborate on something, it's literally like a hop in the line. So you can see like in 2008 and 2009, you see that it's kind of slow, and like there's like some of them that are like interacting and collaborating together. But then something happens in the summer of 2010, and you see like a bunch of them hop onto these two channels and work together. And this is what happened there was WONGFU made a short series with a bunch of their friends called Fun Employment. So this other line that it's hopping between is that series. And after that, you see them like just kind of interacting, like collaborating all together, like very often. And then by the end, like everybody's, you know, like just working together. So that was a really, really fun side project. And I don't actually know why I never released it, but I never felt like fully satisfied about it. So I kept on being like, oh, I'll just like do this one more thing, and it just never got released to the public. Around fall of that year, or summer/fall of that year, there was the 3rd annual GitHub Data Challenge. and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. Like, I get to play with their API. And then when I had shown the previous WONGFU side project at a meetup, somebody was like, oh, you can apply this to like GitHub information. That would be cool also, like GitHub collaboration information, and that would be really cool. So then when I saw this challenge, I was like, oh, that sounds so fun. So then I was like, oh, I wonder if those popular repos and like, you know, popular authors of those repos and other popular authors, I wonder if they like ever, you know, like if they contribute on one, like do they contribute back, or like what does that look like? So that was kind of like the basis of the side project. So the difficulty that I ran into here was what I wanted to do, basically translate it into put in a GitHub author's screen name, go get their top 5 repos, then go get the top 5 repos' top 5 contributors, then get the top 5 contributors, which by now is like about 25 or so, their top 5 repos, and by the way, also get their commits so that you can have commit history and like see how they collaborate together. So you can imagine that like that meant that I couldn't do this on the front end because, you know, like the browser would just hate me. And I think GitHub also like rate limited me so that I couldn't get all of that information anyways. So that meant that I had to learn Rails. And so I worked with one of my friends to learn Rails, or like Python or Rails or something backend, so that I could go and get all of this data. So number one thing I learned, threading and locking is really hard, and I shouldn't have like slept through that lecture. Number two is that I realized I knew absolutely nothing about developing a backend, and that every time I hit a problem in trying to get the data, or like, you know, trying to design the database or any of that, I would fall back onto what I knew from developing front end. So that convinced me that I needed to do some more studying and learning, and like, you know, maybe read some books, or and kind of learn how to do this the right way, I guess. And that's one of the reasons why it never got put up, because then I ran into some bug that was on the back end that I could like not understand. And the bigger, more important reason of why this never got released was that if you could look at that and see that, there's so much data. There's just like, it's just all crammed onto one screen. And it makes absolutely no sense, and it's kind of pretty, and it's kind of like the conversation that was happening over there earlier about like there's data art where it's like really, really pretty, but then like how do you even make that useful? Because that's not useful. I'm not getting any insight into this. So the important thing from this one was I have all of this data. That's great, but that does not mean that I should use all of it. That I should scope it down and make it simpler and ask the right questions. So I took a break from all of that because it was just too hard. And in the spring of 2015, I did this side project called Expenses. And it was basically just like a simple way of, because expense tracking isn't fun. Like nobody wants to like after a meal sit there and like enter it into their phone. So I was like, oh, what's the easiest way? Like, what's the easy and potentially fun way to, you know, enter expenses and categorize them? And at the same time, I was writing a blog post on React, the approach that we were taking with React and D3 and Flux. So I thought this would be like the perfect kind of example app to go with the blog, because I wanted to show like features that were beyond just like a standard traditional to-do app. And I was like, this is going to be great. And then it took like 3 months, and like my blog post took like 6 months to write, and I'm a really slow writer anyways. But it basically looks like you just put in like, I don't know, I haven't had dinner yet, but let's pretend I did. Like I put it in, and I want to categorize it. And the way I categorize it is just dragging it over one of these. And so I really liked this side project for showing React and Flux with D3 because I think the thing that React does really, really well is helping you manage an user action that resulted in a change somewhere else on the screen. So for example, if I go and delete this, then you expect this to change in size and this link to change. So then, and then you expect that to go back in. If, for example, I was like, oh, I actually want to edit this because it was actually like a really grand dinner and it was $50. And then it means that this user action caused like all of these different things to change on the screen. So it was really, really fun, actually. It also made me realize that it's the first time I did some sort of like a visual tool and application by myself, so I'm a horrible interaction designer. But it also kind of like made me want to do more with this. Let me know if you, for whatever reason, want an expense tracking app that has like a very visual component, because I want to do this with like sleeker design, and like I want to learn Redux with it, so like use that as a like an excuse to learn Redux, and then yeah, and then maybe like put in credit card information, but that also means that I need to get better with security, so that's like a long-term thing. So around the summer of 2015, things came together such that I worked on WONGFU again. And this came about because, one, I had some feedback on my React and D3 blog post about, hey, like, what if you like try it a different way, or like, what if you use React in this way and not this way? So I wanted to I rewrote this. It used to be in Backbone and D3, and rewrote it completely to use React and D3. And also, at that time, I was reading the code for D3 transitions, and I realized that I knew how to do something that I had always wanted to do, but wasn't technically savvy enough to be able to do, and that was to animate the SVG paths on user scroll. So what that looks like, if I can get to the tab, is this. So, whoa. OK, that's supposed to be later. So, oh, I can't. OK. Another thing I did with this is play sounds. It's muted on my, but like it comes out. So every time, so it's the same concept as my third version, where each of these lines represent a YouTuber, and instead of the kind of messy force layout that was coming in the like side, now it's down here, and I like to think it's like a little bit more cleaned up and sleek. And every time that you scroll past a video, it plays the sound associated with that line, which is like kind of cacophonous, and I don't know what I want to do with this, but it's really, really fun, and people seem to love it. But the thing that I was really proud of is you can see as I scroll, all of these lines are like they're stopping and animating and stopping until only like a certain Y position on the screen. It like adds absolutely nothing to the visualization in terms of giving information, but from a technical standpoint, I was really, really happy. And then I also put like this mini map over here, and I'm planning to do like annotations on this side, and someday, I swear someday in the future, it will get released to the public someday. Yeah, so it plays sounds on scroll. second to last side project that I want to share with you is last year around November time, we had the second on D3 OnConf. And as with every D3 OnConf, we ask all of the participants to submit a simple blog, a simple visualization as kind of their, I guess, like admittance fee. And so then like we started getting all of that data, and then like Ian collected it into like a block of all the blocks. And as soon as I saw all of that data, I knew I had to play with it because it was so much fun. Because I wanted to see all of the blocks and the D3 functions that they used, and at what frequency that they used. So this is what it ended up looking like. Each of the black dots are a block submission, and each of the circles on the side are D3 functions that those blocks might have used. And each block is placed with the force layout nearest to the D3 function that they used most often. So the hope, I don't know if this is actually true or not, the hope is that if you have your block over here, then those nearest to you must have done something similar to you. And then you can like brush over it and then like kind of browse through all of the different blog submissions that there might have been. And then the hope was really just that like as people went to the OnConf, like maybe they can be like, oh hey, you made this block, that's so cool, and kind of like a conversation starter. And so this was really fun to do. And it was actually also really significant for me because it was the first time I ever used Block Builder. And what Block Builder is just kind of like, is everybody familiar with building blocks? Yeah? It's this really cool project by Ian. I'm talking about Ian a lot tonight. But it just makes it really easy for you to start a D3 project, and it gets published as a gist, so then it like shows up in your blogs page. It was the first time that I used Block Builder, and thus the first time I really used blocks actually. And whereas in all of my previous side projects, they were like really huge monolithic side projects where I would like code in my cave, and then I would come out once in a while to a meetup, and then like get some feedback, or like talk to some friends and get some feedback, and I'll go back into my cave and like keep coding. And it was like a really long, slow process. And this was the first time, because I was using blocks, I was able to like kind of think of an idea, build it, and then like send out the link on Twitter or on Slack, and like get really, really quick feedback on like, you know, if it makes sense or if it looks good or what feature should I add, and like iterate that way. Like each time with like 6 or 7 different blocks. And then once I'm at like a place that I'm very satisfied with the visualization, take it to like my usual standard like you know, sandbox and make it into a full visualization. And what this meant was that now I had more than just myself semi-invested into the visualization, so I actually felt obligated to finish it and finish it in a timely manner, and then put it out there, because now people were like, hey Shirley, like you and I talked about this, like, you know, when is that gonna be out there? And I would be like, oh yeah, soon. And so this one, like, start to finish, maybe like 2 weeks, and it was like one of it. I swear I'm just gonna do my side projects like this from now on, just use Block Builder. So finally, you guys, last one, last stretch. Who's tired of hearing me talk? Because I am. So my most recent side project is called TWEETY. It makes me really, really happy, and I love this side project. Basically, it's a portrait of tweets, and what I mean by that is, so I have a curated collection of Twitterers. What do you call people that use Twitter? Twitterers? Twitter people, and I pulled all of their like most recent tweets. So anybody have like somebody that they want to see? NASA? NASA turned out quite well. So again, NASA. So that's NASA. And what I did here is the basic idea behind it was, what if I could map a tweet to each pixel, color it by the type of the tweet, and then size it by how many likes that tweet got. So like, for example, like this one's, oh, 2,000 favorites, cool. And like, you can like sort it so that you can see, you know, like see them by top tweet or top number of favorites. You can sort it by type. You can sort it by date. And then I wanted to put Simon's in there, but Simon didn't have enough tweets. So it didn't, like, the portrait didn't turn out really well. But if you know Elijah, here's Elijah's. You can kind of make out his hair. And there's Ian's. Ian's turned out quite well. And if you've ever met Victor, his turned out really well. So there's also like Tony Chu that did the machine learning, scrolly telling. Oh, I wish Micah was here because Micah's turned out so well. So basically, it was just taking their image and then running dithering algorithms on it, and then you know, taking the pixels that came out of there and mapping it to each tweet. Oh, sorry. By that I mean, is it a retweet? Is it a reply? Or is it an original tweet? And it's really interesting because, like, if you notice, like, when it was NASA, because they have so many followers, each of the like pixels were really, really fat because like each of them had so many favorites. And then if you look at like, say Matt and Micah's, like, you can really tell which one, like, which tweets got a lot of attention, which ones didn't. Like, and especially if I like sort it by favorites, you can tell like the top of his head is really bold, and the rest is like, you know, really like, really, what's the word, small? I don't know. Sorry. Maybe it's a good thing he's not here. So this was inspired by a talk at Waffle.js over in San Francisco by Kosamari, whose real name I can never pronounce, about image processing. And she's the one that kind of took a lot of these kind of, I think she's most known for the algorithm scarf. So she basically took the like sorting algorithm that Mike Bostock did, and then she like, you know, ported it into Canvas, and then she made it into a knitting pattern and knitted it, and it was really awesome. And so she was talking about Canvas and all of that. So it like, after I listened to that talk, I was like, oh, I gotta do something about this. This is too amazing. So it went really well with the fact that I really wanted to, I've been wanting to learn about Canvas, and I've been wanting to learn about how to build interactions, so click and hover interactions into Canvas, as well as how to animate with Canvas. It was apparently the first time I had ever used a fisheye. I was really, really like surprised about that because I've had so many dreams about fisheye. But also apparently people really, really like dots, like more than I could have imagined. So those are, wow, all of my side projects, all 10 of them. While preparing for this talk, I've learned some things about myself. One, I don't version, and it's really, really important. So I went through like some of my like, you know, like my side projects from like 2 or 3 years ago, and all of them like package JSON just says like D3 star, like, you know, like express star. Stupid, very stupid, because that means that 3 years, I guess I would have never thought that 3 years later I would bring it up in a meetup to show. But 3 years later, like, I can't rerun it because I don't have the right versioning number, so I have to bring up like my old laptop and figure out what versions those were. So very stupid. I'm now gonna start versioning everything. Even more importantly, documentation is really, really important because there's some side projects that I can't bring back up because I don't know how to run it anymore. So I wish I wrote a README. So out of all of the side projects I've done, I think the pattern that I've seen is that I tend to finish the side projects where I started with a very clear inspiration and a very clear question that I wanted answers to. And finally, it's kind of incredible how many things and how that I've learned by doing just side projects and the people that I met, and yeah, it's really surprising. So thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions about any of the things that I went through, let me know. But thank you.